Human interactions are rarely straightforward. Every conversation, gesture, and tone carries subtle information about what someone is thinking or feeling. To read people like an open book is not about guessing with certainty or exploiting weaknesses. It is about enhancing awareness, recognizing patterns, and improving your understanding of human behavior. When you learn to observe carefully, interpret thoughtfully, and respond ethically, you can communicate more effectively and make better informed decisions and navigate complex social environments with confidence. The first step is observation. People express their intentions and emotions through multiple channels: words, voice, body language, and micro-expressions. Paying attention to these subtle cues often reveals more than what is explicitly stated. For example, a slight hesitation before answering a question, a change in posture, or a brief facial expression can indicate uncertainty, discomfort, or interest. Observing these signals with awareness rather than judgment increases the probability that you understand the other person's perspective more accurately. Next comes contextual analysis. Behavior alone can be misleading. Its meaning often depends on the situation, cultural norms, and individual differences. Someone crossing their arms may indicate discomfort in one context, but simply habit in another. To read people effectively, combine behavioral observation with context to avoid misinterpretation. This approach allows you to form balanced assessments, minimizing assumptions while improving situational understanding. Patterns over time are essential to identify. One isolated gesture or phrase does not provide certainty, but repeated behaviors reveal tendencies. Consistency in tone, choice of words, and nonverbal cues helps you predict likely reactions, gauge trustworthiness, and understand priorities. Observing patterns increases the likelihood of informed judgment while maintaining fairness and ethical engagement. Listening actively is as critical as watching carefully. How someone speaks, their rhythm, word choice, and emphasis can reveal confidence, hesitation, or openness. Listening attentively enhances your comprehension and allows for thoughtful, responsive interaction. Active listening also builds credibility, trust, and receptivity, to making your communication more effective without relying on force or volume. Interpreting human behavior requires moderation and humility. Avoid absolute conclusions or overconfidence. People are complex, and no single gesture, phrase, or expression can guarantee insight into thoughts or intentions. Using probability-based reasoning such as "this likely indicates" or "it appears that" ensures that your assessments are realistic, ethical, and grounded in careful observation rather than speculation. Empathy and perspective-taking complement observation. Understanding how others might feel or think in a situation helps interpret behaviors more accurately. Empathy does not imply agreement, but promotes insight into motivations and concerns. Combined with pattern recognition and contextual analysis, empathy allows you to read people in a way that supports ethical influence, collaboration, and thoughtful engagement. Finally, reflection and continuous refinement are crucial. After interactions, review what cues you noticed, how you interpreted them, and the outcomes of your communication. Over time, you build sharper observational skills, stronger interpretive ability, and greater confidence in responding ethically and effectively. Reading people like an open book is a skill developed gradually through careful attention, analysis, and practice, not instant insight or guaranteed prediction. When applied responsibly, these skills enhance both personal and professional interactions. You increase your awareness, improve decision-making, and navigate conversations with confidence and clarity. Learning to read people like an open book is not about controlling them. It is about understanding them better to communicate more effectively, respond thoughtfully, and foster trust. By observing, listening, analyzing context, noting patterns, applying empathy, and reflecting on interactions, but you gradually increase your ability to perceive human behavior accurately. This creates opportunities for ethical influence, mutual understanding, and strategic clarity in everyday life. Chapter 1. The Foundations of Reading. People. Reading people like an open book begins with understanding the basic principles of human behavior. At its core, human interaction is a combination of verbal communication, non-verbal cues, and contextual influences. And each person communicates not only through words but also through tone, gestures, posture, expressions, and patterns of attention. Observing these signals provides insight into what someone may be thinking, feeling, or prioritizing without making assumptions or claiming certainty. The first foundational principle is observation without judgment. Observing carefully is not about labeling someone as truthful or deceptive instantly. Instead, it is about noticing subtle cues, a shift in posture, a glance away from eye contact, changes in tone, or variations in pace while speaking. Each signal may carry meaning depending on the context. For instance, leaning forward slightly could indicate interest or engagement, while folding arms may suggest discomfort, but it may also be a habitual gesture. Accurate reading relies on noting behavior consistently over time, which increases the likelihood that your interpretation reflects tendencies rather than one-off reactions. Contextual awareness is equally critical. Human behavior cannot be analyzed in isolation. The environment, social dynamics, personal stresses, and cultural background all influence actions and expressions. A person who seems reserved in one situation may be outgoing in another, or someone who avoids eye contact could simply be reflecting a cultural norm. An effective observation requires combining these external factors with behavioral cues, allowing for more realistic and ethical interpretation. The next principle is pattern recognition. One isolated gesture or remark rarely provides reliable insight. People display tendencies rather than absolutes, so repeated behaviors across situations are the most informative. Patterns can reveal communication style, emotional state, or priorities. For example, if someone consistently interrupts during conversations, it may indicate impatience, assertiveness, or a desire to steer the dialogue. Observing patterns increases the probability of informed understanding without assuming omniscience. Active listening forms another crucial layer of reading people. Listening attentively goes beyond hearing words. It involves understanding tone, emphasis, and phrasing. Certain word choices can reveal confidence, hesitation, or emotional undertones. Listening for pauses, repetitions, and inconsistencies provides additional insight into thought processes and engagement levels. Active listening also signals respect, making others more likely to communicate openly, which in turn enhances your ability to interpret behavior accurately. Emotional awareness is a complementary skill. People rarely separate their emotional state from their communication. A change in energy, tone, or responsiveness can indicate stress, excitement, curiosity, or uncertainty. By maintaining composure and observing others' emotional cues, you can adjust your own communication to create clarity, reduce misunderstandings, and respond effectively. Emotional awareness does not mean assuming you know someone's exact feelings, but it helps you understand the general direction of their responses. Non-verbal communication is often the most revealing component. Micro-expressions, brief, involuntary facial movements, can indicate fleeting emotions, while gestures and posture convey attention, confidence, or discomfort. Even subtle behaviors such as tapping a finger, shifting weight, or tilting the head provide clues about engagement and thought processes. By combining observation of non-verbal cues with verbal communication and context, you increase the likelihood of accurately interpreting patterns in behavior. Moderation and probability-based thinking are essential to ethical and realistic reading. Human behavior is complex, and no single signal guarantees a conclusion. Avoid language that suggests certainty, such as "they are lying" or "they think this." Instead, adopt phrasing like "it seems likely that" or "this behavior may indicate." This approach respects the complexity of individuals, preserves ethical integrity, and reduces the risk of misinterpretation or unfair judgment. Empathy and perspective-taking enhance interpretation. By imagining how another person may perceive a situation, you gain insight into their priorities, motivations, and concerns. Empathy does not mean agreement or influence. It is a tool for understanding context and behavior more accurately. Ethical application of empathy allows for thoughtful engagement, improved communication, and deeper awareness of subtle behavioral signals. Reflective practice is key to mastery. After interactions, consider the cues you observed, your interpretations, and the outcomes. Were your observations consistent with subsequent behavior? Did you notice patterns that were overlooked in the moment? Reflection builds self-awareness, sharpens observational skills, and helps refine your ability to interpret behavior in ethically responsible ways. Finally, reading people effectively requires discipline and patience. Skillful observation and interpretation do not occur instantly. They develop through repeated practice, careful attention, and reflective analysis. The goal is not to manipulate or predict behavior with certainty, but to increase awareness, improve communication, and navigate social interactions more thoughtfully. Each encounter provides data for learning, allowing you to refine your understanding of human behavior gradually and responsibly. By combining careful observation, contextual awareness, pattern recognition, active listening, emotional awareness, attention to non-verbal cues, probability-based interpretation, empathy, reflective practice, and disciplined patience, you lay a strong foundation for reading people like an open book. These skills enable you to understand others more accurately, communicate more effectively, and engage ethically and strategically in social interactions. The ability to read people is not an absolute power. It is a cultivated skill that enhances clarity, insight, and human connection when applied thoughtfully. To Chapter 2. The role of body language. Body language is one of the most informative aspects of human communication. While words convey explicit messages, the body often reveals subtle, unspoken information about a person's thoughts, feelings, and intentions. Learning to observe and interpret body language ethically and accurately significantly increases your ability to read people like an open book. The first principle in reading body language is awareness of posture. Posture reflects energy levels, engagement, and confidence. An upright, relaxed posture often indicates attentiveness and composure, while slouched or tense posture may suggest fatigue, discomfort, or defensiveness. Observing these signals provides context for understanding verbal communication, as physical cues can reinforce or contradict spoken words. However, it is important to consider the context. Someone may slouch simply because they are tired, not because they are disinterested. Understanding posture patterns over time enhances the probability of accurate interpretation. Gestures and hand movements also offer insight into thought processes. People often use hands to emphasize points, convey openness, or indicate uncertainty. For instance, open palms can signal transparency or willingness, while fidgeting or repetitive movements may suggest nervousness or distraction. Observing gestures in combination with verbal content allows for a nuanced understanding of engagement and emotional state. Patterns in gestures over multiple interactions are more informative than isolated movements. Facial expressions are among the most revealing indicators of emotion. Subtle changes, such as micro-expressions, can reflect brief emotional responses that may not be verbally communicated. A quick furrow of the brow, a fleeting smile, or a momentary glance away can provide context to verbal statements. Ethical observation of facial expressions involves noting these signals without assuming absolute knowledge of the person's internal state. Probabilistic interpretation, considering the likelihood that certain expressions reflect specific emotions, supports realistic understanding. Eye contact conveys attention, interest, and confidence. Sustained, relaxed eye contact generally signals engagement, while frequent avoidance may indicate discomfort, distraction, or contemplation. However, cultural norms and personal habits influence eye contact, so interpretation requires contextual consideration. Observing patterns of eye behavior across situations provides a more reliable basis for assessment than isolated moments. Proxemics, or personal space, is another valuable dimension. The distance a person maintains during conversation often reflects comfort levels, social norms, and relationship dynamics. Respecting personal space while noting shifts, such as leaning closer to emphasize agreement or stepping back during disagreement, can provide cues about engagement and attitude. Consistent observation over multiple interactions improves interpretation, accuracy, and reduces misjudgment. Tone of voice and vocal patterns complement body language. Pitch, pace, volume, and inflection can reveal confidence, hesitation, enthusiasm, or uncertainty. A steady tone suggests composure, while variations in pitch may indicate excitement or tension. Integrating vocal cues with visual body signals allows for a holistic understanding of communication. Again, patterns over time are more informative than single instances, providing a basis for probabilistic insight rather than absolute conclusion. Clusters of signals increase reliability. A single gesture, expression, or tone may be ambiguous, but when multiple signals align, the likelihood of accurate interpretation rises. For example, a person who avoids eye contact, fidgets, and speaks in a hesitant tone is more likely to be uncomfortable or uncertain than someone exhibiting just one of these cues. Ethical observation relies on cross-referencing multiple behaviors rather than drawing conclusions from a single indicator. Temporal changes in body language are also significant. Shifts in posture, gestures, expressions, tilt or tone during a conversation often indicate changing levels of comfort, agreement, or engagement. Observing these dynamics allows you to adjust your own communication, ask clarifying questions, or pause for reflection, creating an environment of mutual understanding. Cultural and individual differences must always be considered. Body language cues vary widely across cultures, personality types, and personal habits. A gesture interpreted one way in one culture may have a completely different meaning in another. Similarly, individuals have unique behavioral tendencies that may not conform to general norms. Ethical interpretation requires humility, context consideration, and avoidance of assumptions. Integration with verbal communication enhances effectiveness. Body language rarely exists in isolation from speech. By combining visual signals with words, tone, and context, you build a more complete understanding of the person's intent, engagement, and emotional state. Observing alignment or misalignment between verbal and non-verbal signals provides insights that improve clarity in communication. Finally, practice and reflection are essential for mastering body language observation. After interactions, review what cues you noticed, how they correlated with verbal communication, and whether your interpretations were consistent with outcomes. Mental reflective practice sharpens observation skills, improves probability-based interpretation, and strengthens your ability to engage ethically and effectively. Mastering the role of body language is not about controlling or judging others. It is about increasing awareness, improving understanding, and fostering clearer communication. By observing posture, gestures, facial expressions, eye contact, personal space, tone, clusters of signals, temporal changes, and cultural factors, that in integrating them with verbal communication, you develop a skill set that supports ethical influence and strategic clarity. With practice, body language becomes a powerful tool for reading people, enhancing connection, and navigating social interactions with confidence and insight. Chapter 3. Understanding verbal cues and speech patterns. While body language provides critical insight into human behavior, the way people speak, their words, tone, tics and rhythm offers another dimension for reading them effectively. Verbal cues can reveal thought processes, emotional states, and priorities when interpreted carefully and ethically. Mastering this skill allows you to engage more meaningfully, make informed observations, and communicate strategically without assuming certainty or manipulating others. The first principle in analyzing verbal communication is paying attention to word choice, and the words a person selects often reflect underlying priorities, attitudes, and levels of confidence. Someone who frequently uses qualifiers like "I think" or "maybe" may be expressing uncertainty or caution, while consistent use of direct statements suggests confidence and decisiveness. Noticing patterns in word choice across conversations increases the likelihood of understanding tendencies rather than relying on isolated statements. Sentence structure and phrasing also provide insight. Long and complex sentences can indicate reflective thinking, careful planning, or a desire to provide detail. Short, abrupt sentences may suggest impatience, discomfort, or urgency. Observing how someone structures their speech can reveal information about their thought patterns, engagement level, and approach to problem solving. Combining these observations with context improves interpretive accuracy. Tone of voice is a crucial verbal cue. Pitch, volume, cadence, and an emphasis convey emotional nuances beyond the literal meaning of words. A slightly raised pitch may indicate stress or excitement, while monotone delivery can signal calmness, fatigue, or disengagement. Volume changes often correspond to emphasis or urgency, and pauses may reflect contemplation or hesitation. Observing tone in conjunction with body language helps create a more complete understanding of communication dynamics. Pacing and rhythm also carry meaning. Rapid speech may indicate anxiety, eagerness, or high energy, whereas slow, deliberate pacing suggests careful thought, confidence, or measured consideration. Noticing shifts in rhythm within a conversation can reveal changes in emotional state or engagement. Ethical observation emphasizes probability, recognizing that one factor alone cannot guarantee insight. Patterns of repetition provide additional clues. Repeated phrases, words, or expressions may highlight priorities or concerns that are top of mind for the speaker. For example, consistently returning to a particular topic can indicate personal importance, while repetition of qualifiers may reflect uncertainty or caution. By noting these repetitions, you can identify themes that inform understanding without making absolute assumptions. Inconsistencies between verbal and nonverbal cues are particularly informative. If someone states confidence verbally but displays nervous gestures, their body language may indicate underlying discomfort or uncertainty. Conversely, a calm tone combined with nervous words may reflect strategic phrasing or caution. Ethical interpretation involves observing such discrepancies without judgment, using them to refine your understanding rather than as a tool for control. Active questioning and reflective listening enhance verbal cue analysis. By asking open-ended questions like, "Could you elaborate on that?" or "How did you come to that conclusion?" you encourage detailed responses while observing speech patterns. Reflecting back what the person says in your own words not only confirms comprehension, but also allows you to notice subtle verbal signals such as hesitation, emphasis, or tone shifts, further improving insight. Contextual sensitivity remains essential. Words carry different weight depending on circumstances, cultural norms, and individual habits. Phrases that may appear assertive in one context can be polite in another. Effective reading of verbal cues requires combining careful observation with awareness of situational and cultural factors. Context ensures that interpretations remain grounded, realistic, and ethical. Consistency over time strengthens probability-based understanding. A single verbal cue is rarely sufficient to infer motives or attitudes. Observing speech patterns, tone, pacing, and phrasing across multiple interactions allows for more reliable assessment of tendencies and priorities. Patterns, rather than isolated moments, are the foundation for accurate, ethical interpretation of verbal behavior. Integrating verbal cues with body language creates a holistic perspective. Communication is multidimensional, and speech without non-verbal context may be misleading. When verbal and non-verbal signals align, your understanding is strengthened. When they diverge, your attention is drawn to areas for closer observation and reflection. Integration improves the likelihood of thoughtful, informed understanding rather than overconfidence or speculation. Ethical considerations in verbal analysis are critical. Observing speech patterns is not about manipulation or exploitation. It is a tool to enhance understanding, facilitate clearer communication, and increase situational awareness. Avoid drawing absolute conclusions or using insights to coerce. Instead, apply verbal observation to foster clarity, responsiveness, and ethical influence in all interactions. Finally, practice and reflection refine verbal reading skills. After conversations, consider which cues were most informative, which patterns were consistent, and how your interpretations aligned with outcomes. Reflective practice enhances awareness, strengthens probabilistic reasoning, and improves ethical, effective engagement in future interactions. Over time, this cultivates the ability to read people like an open book while maintaining respect, fairness, and clarity. By attending to word choice, sentence structure, tone, pacing, repetition, consistency, integration with non-verbal cues, contextual sensitivity, and reflective practice, you develop a reliable framework for understanding verbal behavior. Mastering these elements equips you to interpret speech ethically, respond thoughtfully, and navigate social interactions with insight and composure. Verbal cues are a lens through which human behavior can be observed, not controlled. They are a source of information that, when interpreted responsibly, enhances communication, decision-making, and understanding in everyday life. Chapter 4. Micro-expressions and subtle emotional signals. One of the most powerful tools for reading people like an open book lies in recognizing micro-expressions and subtle emotional signals. These are brief, ticked involuntary facial expressions and minor behavioral cues that often reveal fleeting emotions before a person consciously masks them. Understanding these signals ethically can enhance awareness, improve communication, and allow you to respond thoughtfully to others' unspoken feelings. Micro-expressions are extremely brief facial movements, usually lasting a fraction of a second. They can indicate surprise, fear, anger, happiness, sadness, disgust, or contempt. For example, because a rapid furrowing of the brow may signal brief confusion or concern, while a momentary tightening of the lips may suggest restraint or tension. Observing micro-expressions requires careful attention and practice, but even noticing general trends in emotional display can provide valuable context for understanding interactions. It is important to combine micro-expressions with contextual observation. A fleeting look of concern during a casual conversation does not automatically indicate disagreement or discomfort. Environmental factors, stress, or external distractions can influence subtle expressions. Ethical interpretation requires considering the situation, prior behavior, and verbal content alongside facial signals. Doing so increases the probability that you make accurate, responsible assessments rather than drawing hasty conclusions. Subtle behavioral cues extend beyond the face, but minor gestures, posture adjustments, and changes in tone often accompany micro-expressions. A brief withdrawal of the hand, a shift in sitting position, or a short pause in speech can reflect uncertainty, hesitation, or contemplation. Observing these signals consistently over time allows you to identify patterns, providing insight into tendencies rather than one-off reactions. Clusters of signals improve reliability. A single micro-expression or minor gesture may be ambiguous. However, but when multiple subtle cues occur together, their combined effect is more informative. For instance, a slight tightening of the jaw, crossed arms, and a pause in speech may collectively suggest tension or guardedness. Clusters provide probabilistic insight while maintaining ethical responsibility by avoiding overconfidence in interpretation. Timing and dynamics of expressions and behaviors are essential. But observing, when a micro-expression occurs in relation to a statement or event, can clarify its meaning. A fleeting look of surprise immediately following a question, for example, may indicate uncertainty or unexpected information. By noting temporal relationships, you enhance your ability to interpret emotional signals accurately and responsively. Integration with verbal cues enhances understanding. Facial micro-expressions, gestures, tone and posture should always be considered alongside what is being said and how it is delivered. Inconsistencies between verbal and non-verbal behavior can indicate areas for careful attention, while alignment often reinforces the message. Ethical reading of these signals focuses on awareness and communication, not manipulation or coercion. Cultural and individual variability is a critical factor. Micro-expressions and subtle signals may manifest differently depending on personal habits, upbringing, or social norms. Some individuals are naturally more expressive, while others mask emotions intentionally. Being aware of these differences reduces misinterpretation and encourages humility in observation. Probabilistic interpretation, rather than absolute assumption, ensures responsible understanding. Emotional intelligence complements micro-expression recognition. Being able to gauge subtle emotional signals enhances empathy, responsiveness, and interpersonal effectiveness. Recognizing that someone may be frustrated, excited, or hesitant allows you to adjust your communication thoughtfully, fostering clarity, collaboration, and ethical influence. Emotional awareness is a skill developed over time through practice, reflection, and observation. Observation over repeated interactions is more informative than single encounters. Patterns in subtle emotional signals often reveal tendencies, coping mechanisms, and priorities. For example, noticing that someone consistently displays brief signs of tension during group discussions may indicate cautiousness or introversion. Observing and reflecting on such patterns strengthens probability-based understanding without assuming certainty. Practical applications of recognizing micro-expressions include improving active listening, adjusting tone, and timing responses. By identifying subtle discomfort, hesitation, or agreement, you can adapt your phrasing or approach to promote understanding and constructive dialogue. Ethical application ensures that these skills support clarity and communication rather than manipulation. Reflection and practice are essential for mastery. After conversations, review which subtle cues were observed, their context, and the outcomes of the interaction. Note patterns in facial expressions, gestures, and other behavioral signals. Over time, this iterative process sharpens observation, enhances interpretation skills, and improves your ability to navigate conversations with composure, insight, and ethical awareness. Mastering micro-expressions and subtle emotional signals requires discipline, patience, and humility. This skill is not about certainty or controlling others. It is about enhancing perception, improving awareness, and fostering thoughtful communication. By observing micro-expressions, integrating them with verbal and non-verbal cues, respecting context, and reflecting on patterns, you gradually build the ability to read people responsibly and accurately. Reading these subtle cues enhances both personal and professional interactions. It enables more effective communication, improves understanding of unspoken priorities, and allows you to respond thoughtfully. This skill strengthens credibility, encourages ethical influence, and creates opportunities for collaboration built on mutual awareness and respect. Ultimately, a micro-expression awareness is a tool for probabilistic understanding, not manipulation. It equips you with information to interpret behavior, communicate effectively, and maintain ethical engagement. When practiced consistently, observing subtle emotional signals allows you to respond with insight, empathy, and composure, making human interactions more transparent, productive, and meaningful. In Chapter 5, Patterns of Behavior and Predictive Observation, understanding human behavior is more than noticing isolated gestures, facial expressions, or verbal cues. It involves recognizing patterns over time. Patterns provide context, improve the accuracy of interpretation, and allow for better informed responses in interactions. By observing tendencies rather than single instances, you can ethically read people like an open book while maintaining humility and respect for complexity. The first step in pattern recognition is consistent observation. One-off behaviors rarely convey complete information about a person's tendencies. A single hesitation, smile, or gesture could be influenced by circumstance, mood, or environment. Observing how a person acts across multiple interactions provides a more reliable basis for understanding. For instance, someone who consistently avoids interrupting others may be naturally patient or cautious, whereas occasional pauses in speech do not carry the same weight. Repetition of behavior often reveals priorities, comfort zones, and communication style. People tend to exhibit consistent patterns in how they express opinions, react to stress, or handle disagreement. Noticing repeated gestures, phrases, and expressions allows you to identify likely tendencies. For example, repeated fidgeting during meetings may indicate underlying discomfort with group settings, and while consistent smiling and nodding may suggest attentiveness and receptivity. Observing these patterns over time increases the probability that your interpretations reflect tendencies rather than isolated behaviors. Temporal sequences provide additional insight. The timing and progression of behaviors during interactions can indicate evolving thought processes or emotional states. For instance, a person who begins a conversation with cautious statements but gradually adopts confident language may be gaining comfort or reassessing their perspective. Observing sequences allows you to understand not just what people do, but how their behavior develops in context, providing richer insight into intentions and engagement. Clusters of behaviors are particularly informative. Individual signals, such as crossing arms, avoiding eye contact, or speaking quickly, may carry ambiguous meaning in isolation. However, when multiple cues occur together consistently, they form patterns that are more indicative of tendencies. Ethical observation emphasizes probabilistic interpretation, recognizing that even clusters increase the likelihood of certain behaviors rather than guaranteeing them. Integrating context is essential. Behavioral patterns are shaped by situational, social, and environmental factors. For example, someone may consistently respond confidently in one-on-one conversations but appear reserved in group settings. Contextual awareness ensures that patterns are interpreted responsibly and reduces the risk of overgeneralization or misjudgment. By combining pattern recognition with situational analysis, you increase the probability of informed understanding without assuming certainty. Verbal and non-verbal alignment strengthens pattern analysis. Observing how speech patterns, tone, and gestures consistently align or misalign over time provides insight into tendencies. For example, a person who verbally expresses agreement while consistently displaying tension may be navigating complex emotions or internal conflict. Recognizing such patterns supports thoughtful interpretation while maintaining ethical integrity. Identifying triggers and responses further enhances predictive observation. Certain topics, behaviors, or environments may consistently elicit specific responses. And by noting these triggers across multiple interactions, you can anticipate likely reactions, adapt your communication, and create a more productive exchange. Predictive observation is probabilistic, not deterministic. It provides guidance for interaction rather than absolute prediction. Behavioral rhythm and flow offer subtle insight into cognitive and emotional tendencies. Some people have a steady, deliberate pace in conversation, while others fluctuate in energy, tone, and gestures. See, observing the rhythm of responses, speech, and body language can reveal tendencies in thought patterns, focus, and engagement. Over time, these patterns allow for more effective communication and anticipation of responses in a wide range of social contexts. Ethical reflection and practice are critical when analyzing behavioral patterns. Observing and interpreting human tendencies is a skill that requires discipline, humility, and continuous refinement. After interactions, I reflect on observed behaviors, compare them with verbal content and outcomes, and identify recurring tendencies. This reflective practice increases self-awareness and sharpens observation skills while ensuring that interpretations remain grounded, ethical, and responsible. Application in daily interactions demonstrates the value of pattern recognition. In professional settings, understanding colleagues' consistent behaviors helps in planning meetings, presenting ideas, and collaborating effectively. In personal interactions, noticing patterns improves empathy, anticipates needs, and strengthens relationships. Across contexts, pattern recognition enhances awareness, improves communication, and fosters ethical influence grounded in observation rather than assumption. Limitations of pattern-based observation must be acknowledged. Patterns provide probabilistic insight, not absolute certainty. Human behavior is influenced by mood, context, and unique experiences. And so flexibility and continuous observation are essential. Ethical interpretation involves considering these limitations, avoiding rigid assumptions, and maintaining openness to variability. Ultimately, recognizing and understanding patterns of behavior allows you to increase situational awareness, make better informed decisions, and communicate more effectively. By integrating consistent observation, repetition, temporal sequences, clusters, context, verbal and non-verbal alignment, triggers, rhythm, and reflective practice, you develop a structured, ethical framework for reading people. Patterns do not guarantee knowledge of thoughts or intentions, but they enhance the probability of understanding behavior, enabling informed and responsible interaction. Pattern recognition is not about control or manipulation. It is about clarity, awareness, and strategic engagement. When applied consistently, it strengthens your ability to interpret human behavior accurately, respond thoughtfully, and maintain ethical influence across personal and professional contexts. By observing trends and tendencies responsibly, you cultivate insight, improve communication, and develop the ability to read people like an open book while respecting their complexity and individuality. Chapter 6. Listening beyond words. Reading people effectively goes beyond observing gestures, expressions, and patterns. It requires deep, attentive listening. Listening is more than hearing words. It is the active process of interpreting tone, rhythm, emphasis, and the unspoken nuances that accompany speech. Developing this skill ethically allows you to understand perspectives, anticipate needs, and communicate with clarity and insight. The first principle of attentive listening is focus without distraction. In most conversations, attention is divided and subtle cues may be missed. By consciously focusing on the speaker's words, tone, and nonverbal signals, you increase the likelihood of accurately interpreting their intent. Active listening requires patience and mindfulness, resisting the urge to plan your response before fully absorbing what is communicated. Tone of voice conveys a great deal of information beyond the literal meaning of words. Changes in pitch, volume, cadence, and inflection often indicate emotion, emphasis, or uncertainty. For example, a slight rise in pitch may suggest curiosity or hesitation, while a steady tone can convey confidence or composure. Listening to tone in conjunction with verbal content and body language allows you to interpret meaning more accurately without assuming certainty. Pauses and timing in speech are critical indicators. Moments of silence or hesitation can reveal contemplation, uncertainty, or an internal evaluation of the situation. Observing when and why pauses occur provides context for understanding the speaker's thought process. Ethical listening emphasizes observation and understanding, not speculation or exploitation of these pauses. Repetition and emphasis highlight priorities and key concerns. People often repeat ideas or phrases that are particularly important to them. By noticing what a person emphasizes verbally, you gain insight into their concerns, values, and focus. Observing patterns of repetition over time increases the probability that your interpretations are meaningful and responsible. Word choice and phrasing reveal cognitive and emotional tendencies. Someone using measured, precise language may be deliberate and analytical, while conversational, flowing language may indicate flexibility or expressiveness. Ethical reading of word choice involves noting tendencies rather than drawing absolute conclusions. For example, the frequent use of qualifiers like perhaps or I feel may reflect caution or reflective thinking rather than indecisiveness. Listening for inconsistencies between words and nonverbal signals can be informative. A person may state agreement verbally while displaying signs of discomfort or hesitation, such as shifting posture, avoiding eye contact, or subtle facial expressions. Noting these discrepancies enhances understanding and situational awareness, but interpretations should remain probabilistic rather than definitive. Contextual sensitivity is essential when interpreting speech. Meaning depends on the environment, topic, and individual differences. Cultural norms, personality traits, and situational factors influence both what is said and how it is expressed. Effective listening considers these contextual factors to avoid misinterpretation and maintain ethical observation. Reflective listening is a practical tool for understanding others while fostering clear communication. By paraphrasing or summarizing what the speaker has said and reflecting it back, you confirm comprehension and invite clarification. This technique also allows you to observe subtle cues in response to your reflection, such as tone changes, facial micro-expressions, or adjustments in posture. Over time, reflective listening improves interpretive accuracy and strengthens relationships. Emotional attunement complements verbal listening. People often communicate emotions indirectly through word choice, pacing, and vocal nuance. Recognizing emotional undertones enhances understanding of underlying priorities, concerns, and intentions. This awareness allows for thoughtful engagement, better informed decisions, and ethical influence while maintaining respect for individual complexity. Patterns in speech are particularly valuable for building long-term insight. Observing how someone expresses agreement, disagreement, enthusiasm, or hesitation across multiple interactions provides a reliable basis for probabilistic understanding. Single instances may be misleading. Repeated tendencies over time create patterns that enhance interpretation without implying absolute knowledge. Ethical listening emphasizes clarity, respect, and mutual benefit. The goal is not manipulation or control, but enhanced understanding and effective communication. Active, attentive listening fosters trust, encourages openness, and strengthens interpersonal connections while supporting informed, strategic engagement in conversations. Practical applications include decision-making, conflict resolution, and collaboration. By listening attentively, you gain nuanced insight into perspectives, identify areas of agreement or concern, and communicate in ways that are responsive and thoughtful. Ethical listening ensures that your understanding supports constructive outcomes rather than coercion or exploitation. But reflection and practice are essential for mastering listening skills. After conversations, review what you observed: verbal patterns, tone, pauses, and non-verbal alignment. Consider how your interpretations aligned with subsequent behavior and outcomes. Reflective practice develops self-awareness, sharpens observational skills, and improves the ability to respond ethically and effectively in future interactions. Ultimately, listening beyond words is a cornerstone of reading people like an open book. By focusing attentively, observing tone, pauses, repetition, word choice, consistency, context, and emotional undertones, you develop a holistic understanding of human behavior. This skill increases clarity, improves decision-making, and fosters ethical, insightful engagement. Listening carefully is not about control. It is about enhancing perception, building trust, and facilitating meaningful communication. Mastering attentive listening requires patience, discipline, and reflection. Over time, it strengthens your ability to interpret subtle signals, understand priorities, and respond thoughtfully. By combining listening with observation, pattern recognition, and ethical analysis, you cultivate a skill set that supports informed, respectful, and strategic interactions in all areas of life. Chapter 7: Context and Environmental Influence. Understanding people fully requires more than observing behavior and speech in isolation. Context and environment play a decisive role in shaping how people act, speak, and respond. To read people like an open book ethically and effectively, it is essential to analyze not only the individual, but also the circumstances that influence their behavior. The first principle is situational awareness. People often adapt their behavior based on the setting, social expectations, and the nature of the interaction. For instance, someone may be confident and assertive in a professional meeting, but reserved and contemplative in a casual social gathering. Observing behavior across different contexts reveals tendencies rather than absolutes and helps differentiate habitual patterns from situational responses. Environmental factors affect body language, tone, and verbal communication. Noise, or crowding, lighting, or time constraints can influence how a person gestures, speaks, or responds. A quiet, private space may encourage open and reflective communication, while a loud or public environment may lead to brevity, caution, or altered posture. Accounting for these environmental factors ensures that your interpretations remain grounded and realistic. Social dynamics are another key element of context. People modify their behavior depending on who is present, their perceived role, and the expectations of the group. For example, a person may display dominance or assertiveness among peers, but deferential or cooperative behavior in front of authority figures. Recognizing these dynamics allows you to interpret signals probabilistically and ethically, avoiding assumptions based on isolated observations. Cultural context plays a critical role in interpreting behavior accurately. Norms around eye contact, personal space, gestures, and tone vary across cultures and communities. What may be interpreted as discomfort in one culture could be a standard expression of politeness or deference in another. Awareness of cultural influence reduces misinterpretation and supports fair, unbiased reading of behavior. Timing and sequence of events are equally important. People respond differently depending on prior events, recent experiences, or current pressures. Observing how behavior shifts in relation to unfolding circumstances provides insight into adaptability, coping mechanisms, and engagement. For instance, hesitation in response to a question immediately following a critical comment may reflect processing rather than resistance. Patterns across contexts enhance understanding. Observing how an individual behaves in diverse situations reveals consistent tendencies such as communication style, emotional regulation, and response strategies. These repeated patterns offer probabilistic insight without implying absolute knowledge. For example, consistently thoughtful responses in high-pressure settings may indicate patience and composure, while sporadic shifts may reflect situational stress rather than personality traits. Interaction with environmental cues is subtle but informative. People often respond to stimuli such as interruptions, distractions, or changes in surroundings with micro-adjustments in posture, gaze, or speech. Noting these responses provides additional layers of context for interpreting behavior. For instance, a slight increase in vocal pitch during a sudden disruption may indicate alertness or mild stress, and observing how they recover helps gauge adaptability. Contextual integration with verbal and non-verbal signals strengthens analysis. Observing behavior, speech, and facial expressions in isolation can be misleading. When these cues are interpreted in the environment in which they occur, the accuracy of your understanding improves. For example, a hesitant tone during a casual conversation may suggest uncertainty, but the same tone under high-pressure conditions may reflect caution or strategy rather than insecurity. Ethical application of context is essential. Contextual observation is a tool to increase understanding, not to manipulate. Recognizing the role of situational influences allows you to respond thoughtfully and strategically while maintaining fairness and respect. It ensures that your interpretation does not unfairly label or judge an individual based on isolated incidents. Reflection and comparison across contexts further refines insight. After interactions, reviewing behavior in relation to the environment helps identify genuine patterns versus situational adaptations. For example, noticing that a person remains composed during both high-stress and casual settings suggests a stable trait, while variability may indicate sensitivity to external influences. Reflective practice increases awareness and sharpens probabilistic interpretation. Predictive value of context awareness lies in anticipating likely responses. By understanding environmental, social, and cultural influences, you can anticipate potential behavior while maintaining ethical boundaries. For instance, knowing that a colleague responds cautiously under time pressure allows you to frame requests more clearly, or improving collaboration without assuming control over their actions. Practical applications of context analysis include professional negotiations, team dynamics, and social interactions. Recognizing environmental influences allows for thoughtful engagement, adaptive communication, and more accurate interpretation of behavior. Ethical observation respects the complexity of human behavior and emphasizes clarity, not control. Cognitive load and situational stress also influence responses. The people under stress, multitasking, or processing complex information may display altered speech patterns, gestures, or expressions. Being mindful of these influences increases accuracy when interpreting behavior and reduces the risk of misjudgment. Observing behavior over time in multiple contexts ensures that temporary stress or situational factors are not mistaken for fixed traits. Integration with pattern recognition and micro-expressions amplifies effectiveness. Context provides the framework in which verbal cues, body language, and micro-expressions occur. By linking observed behavior to environmental conditions, you enhance your ability to make informed, ethical interpretations. This integration increases the likelihood of understanding tendencies rather than making absolute assumptions. Finally, understanding context cultivates empathy and strategic clarity. Recognizing the influence of environment, social norms, and situational pressures allows you to communicate more effectively, anticipate challenges, and respond with composure. It encourages balanced trust and respect while maintaining awareness of behavioral patterns, enhancing your ability to read people responsibly. By observing and analyzing environmental, social, and cultural factors, integrating them with verbal and non-verbal cues, and reflecting on patterns across contexts, you develop a sophisticated understanding of human behavior. Context is not a tool for manipulation, but a lens for probabilistic insight, ethical engagement, and improved communication. Mastering context awareness strengthens your ability to read people like an open book while maintaining integrity, clarity, and respect for complexity. Chapter 8. The Power of Observation and Attention. To detail, observation is a cornerstone of reading people like an open book. The ability to notice subtle cues, small patterns, and nuanced behaviors gives you a probabilistic advantage in understanding others while maintaining ethical boundaries. Attention to detail allows you to integrate multiple signals, identify patterns, and respond thoughtfully without making assumptions or engaging in manipulation. The first principle of effective observation is intentional focus. Observing without a purpose often results in missed cues and misinterpretation. Instead, pay attention to both verbal and non-verbal signals, the environmental context and behavioral patterns. Mindful observation allows you to notice what might otherwise go unnoticed, such as micro-expressions, fleeting gestures, or tonal shifts. Ethical observation is about understanding, not judgment or control. Consistency in observation enhances accuracy. Single behaviors can be misleading, as they may be influenced by stress, fatigue, or temporary emotions. In observing repeated patterns over multiple interactions provides insight into tendencies and priorities. For example, a colleague who consistently leans in while speaking may indicate engagement, while occasional leaning may simply reflect interest in a specific topic. Recognizing these distinctions improves probabilistic interpretation and supports more informed responses. Detail orientation is crucial for understanding subtle cues. Minor adjustments in posture, small hand movements, or slight changes in facial expression can reveal underlying thoughts or emotional shifts. For example, a brief tightening of the lips during a discussion may suggest hesitation, while a fleeting upward glance may indicate reflection or consideration. Observing these details requires patience and practice, as they often occur in fractions of a second. Environmental scanning complements behavioral observation. Noticing how people interact with their surroundings, respond to distractions, or adapt to changing conditions provides additional context for understanding their behavior. A person who adjusts confidently to interruptions or unexpected events may exhibit resilience, while consistent discomfort in dynamic environments may indicate a preference for structure. Contextual awareness enhances interpretation without assuming certainty. Integration of multiple cues increases reliability. Observing a single gesture or expression may provide limited insight, but combining multiple signals, verbal, non-verbal, and environmental, strengthens interpretation. For instance, noticing a hesitant tone, subtle posture shift, and repeated eye contact avoidance collectively suggests discomfort or caution. Ethical observation relies on clustering signals to support probabilistic understanding rather than definitive conclusions. Active engagement aids observation. Rather than passively noticing cues, interacting strategically can reveal patterns and tendencies. Asking open-ended questions, listening attentively, and observing responses in real time allows you to compare verbal content with non-verbal behavior. Over time, these observations provide a richer understanding of communication style, priorities, and likely tendencies. Contextual sensitivity remains essential. Observing someone in isolation without considering situational, cultural, or social factors can lead to misinterpretation. People modify behavior based on environment, group dynamics, and norms, For instance, a person may appear reserved in a public setting but expressive in private. Context ensures that interpretations remain grounded and ethical, supporting clarity rather than judgment. Temporal observation provides insight into adaptability and decision-making. Watching how behavior changes over the course of an interaction reveals emotional and cognitive patterns. For example, someone who becomes more confident after initial hesitation may be processing information or evaluating the situation. Temporal observation highlights tendencies rather than isolated reactions, allowing for probabilistic assessment without assuming absolute knowledge. Ethical application of observation is critical. The goal is to improve understanding, communication, and situational awareness, not to manipulate or coerce. Observing with integrity encourages trust, promotes transparency, and fosters meaningful interactions. Skills in observation should be applied to enhance relationships, improve communication, and support thoughtful engagement rather than control or exploitation. Practice and reflection solidify observational skills. After interactions, review the details you noticed, micro-expressions, gestures, verbal patterns, tone, and environmental interactions. Compare these observations across different contexts and interactions to identify patterns. Reflective practice enhances accuracy, sharpens attention, and strengthens ethical interpretation. Over time, this iterative process allows observation to become intuitive and highly effective. Observation and emotional intelligence are closely linked. Being attuned to the emotions behind subtle signals improves comprehension of intentions and priorities. For example, noticing a subtle sign of frustration allows you to respond with patience, while detecting enthusiasm can guide constructive engagement. Ethical observation fosters empathy and strengthens communication, reinforcing trust and clarity in relationships. Predictive awareness emerges from attentive observation. By recognizing patterns in behavior and environmental response, you increase the likelihood of anticipating reactions in future interactions. This predictive ability is probabilistic, not absolute. It enhances preparedness and communication strategy while maintaining respect for individual autonomy. Integration with other skills, body language interpretation, verbal analysis, context awareness, and micro-expression recognition creates a holistic understanding. Observation alone is informative, but combined with other analytical tools, it provides a comprehensive framework for reading people. Ethical integration ensures that insights are used responsibly, fostering effective, respectful communication. Ultimately, mastery of observation and attention to detail allows you to increase awareness, interpret behavior responsibly, and communicate with insight. It enhances your ability to understand nuances, anticipate likely responses, and navigate social situations with composure and clarity. Observation is not a tool for manipulation. It is a method for probabilistic understanding, ethical engagement, and strategic awareness. By committing to intentional, consistent, detail-oriented, and context-sensitive observation, and by reflecting on patterns over time, you cultivate a skill set that strengthens communication, empathy, and situational awareness. Attentive observation transforms everyday interactions into opportunities for insight, understanding, and ethical influence, allowing you to read people like an open book while maintaining respect for complexity and individuality. For Chapter 9, the role of emotional awareness in reading people. Reading people effectively is not just about observing gestures, speech patterns, or environmental context. It is also about understanding emotions. Emotional awareness allows you to interpret subtle cues ethically, anticipate likely responses, and engage thoughtfully with others. By recognizing and reflecting on emotions, you gain probabilistic insight into behavior while maintaining respect and fairness. The first principle is self-awareness as a foundation. Understanding your own emotions, triggers, and biases improves your ability to observe others objectively. When you are attuned to your own reactions, you are less likely to misinterpret another person's cues through the lens of personal assumptions. Ethical emotional awareness starts with recognizing that your interpretation is probabilistic and reflective, not absolute or authoritative. As recognizing emotional signals in others requires attention to both verbal and non-verbal cues. Facial microexpressions, body posture, and vocal tone provide insight into feelings that may not be explicitly stated. A slight furrowing of the brow may indicate concern, while a relaxed posture combined with soft vocal inflection can suggest comfort or openness. Observing these signals over multiple interactions enhances the likelihood of accurate interpretation. See, patterns of emotional response provide further insight. People often exhibit consistent tendencies in how they experience and express emotions. For example, someone who remains calm in challenging situations may possess emotional regulation skills, while repeated displays of tension in similar contexts may reflect sensitivity to pressure. Identifying such patterns allows for better informed observations without assuming complete knowledge of internal states. And context influences emotional expression. Cultural norms, social dynamics, and situational pressures shape how emotions are displayed. For instance, a person may suppress frustration in a professional setting while expressing it more openly in private. Ethical observation considers these contextual factors, increasing accuracy while respecting individual differences. Subtle indicators of emotion include micro-changes in gestures, gaze, and tone. Minor shifts, such as a slight nod, a brief frown, or changes in vocal pace, can signal internal processing, agreement, or hesitation. These cues are probabilistic indicators, not guarantees, and must be interpreted in combination with context, patterns, and verbal content. Active reflection on observed emotions strengthens understanding. Consider the sequence, intensity, and frequency of emotional signals. How does a person react to questions, challenges, or feedback? How does their emotional expression shift across interactions? Observing trends rather than isolated moments allows for ethical and accurate interpretation. Empathy as an observational tool enhances reading people. Ethical emotional awareness is grounded in empathy, the ability to recognize and consider others' feelings without judgment or exploitation. Empathy allows you to adjust communication, respond thoughtfully, and foster constructive interactions while maintaining fairness and respect. Balancing observation and respect is crucial. But while emotional awareness provides insight, it must not be used to manipulate or coerce. Ethical reading focuses on improving understanding and communication rather than control. Probabilistic interpretation acknowledges the limits of perception, ensuring that interactions remain grounded in respect and integrity. Predictive emotional understanding is probabilistic. Recognizing tendencies in emotional expression increases the likelihood of anticipating reactions. But it does not guarantee outcomes. For example, someone who typically responds with calm deliberation under pressure is likely to maintain composure, but exceptions may occur due to fatigue, stress, or unexpected events. Probabilistic thinking prevents overconfidence and maintains ethical boundaries. Integration with behavioral and verbal analysis creates a comprehensive understanding. Emotional awareness should be combined with pattern recognition, micro-expression observation, to contextual analysis, and attentive listening. By synthesizing these dimensions, you gain a multi-layered perspective that enhances communication, situational awareness, and ethical engagement. Applications in real-world interactions include conflict resolution, collaboration, and negotiation. Understanding emotions allows you to frame questions, offer feedback, and engage in dialogue with insight and composure. For example, noticing subtle signs of frustration in a discussion may encourage a more patient, explanatory approach, increasing the likelihood of constructive outcomes. Developing emotional insight requires consistent practice and reflection. After interactions, review observed emotions, contextual factors, and behavioral cues. Reflect on how your perception aligned with outcomes and identify recurring tendencies. Iterative reflection strengthens probabilistic understanding, sharpens observation skills, and reinforces ethical application. Self-regulation enhances interpretation. Maintaining emotional control during observation allows for clear assessment and prevents projection of personal biases onto others. Self-regulation also promotes calm, strategic communication, reinforcing ethical engagement and reducing the likelihood of misinterpretation or reactive behavior. Ultimately, emotional awareness is a key pillar in reading people like an open book. By attending to subtle emotional cues, and observing patterns, considering context, practicing empathy, and reflecting on outcomes, you develop probabilistic understanding that enhances insight, communication, and situational clarity. Emotional awareness does not grant absolute knowledge, but equips you to interpret behavior responsibly, respond thoughtfully, and foster ethical influence. Mastering emotional observation cultivates patience, attentiveness, and humility. It strengthens your ability to navigate complex social dynamics, anticipate likely reactions, and maintain composure in challenging interactions. Combined with observation, verbal analysis, pattern recognition, and contextual awareness, emotional insight forms a robust framework for reading people ethically, effectively, and responsibly. Chapter 10. Synthesizing observation, awareness, and ethical influence. The final step in reading people like an open book is integration. All the skills developed throughout the previous chapters, observing micro-expressions, listening attentively, recognizing patterns, understanding context, and cultivating emotional awareness, must be synthesized into a cohesive approach. Integration allows you to respond thoughtfully, communicate effectively, and navigate human interactions with clarity and ethical insight. Observation alone is not sufficient. The ability to notice gestures, tone, and behavioral patterns provides raw data, but without interpretation, it remains incomplete. Synthesis requires connecting these observations to context, verbal content, and emotional cues. For instance, a brief expression of concern paired with a hesitant tone may indicate uncertainty. Understanding the situation, prior behavior, and environmental pressures clarifies whether this is a temporary reaction or a consistent tendency. Contextual integration ensures accuracy. Every interaction occurs within a framework of environmental, social, and cultural factors. Observing behavior without considering context can lead to misinterpretation. Synthesizing information means evaluating how situational factors influence behavior while remaining probabilistic in your assumptions. For example, someone may appear impatient in a rushed meeting but demonstrate patience in one-on-one discussions. Recognizing such variations strengthens your ability to interpret tendencies responsibly. Pattern recognition reinforces synthesis. Repeated behaviors across interactions reveal probable tendencies. When combined with contextual understanding and observation of micro-expressions or emotional cues, patterns allow for informed interpretation. For instance, a colleague who consistently pauses before responding may reflect deliberation and caution. Observing this alongside subtle cues, such as body language or tone, increases the likelihood that your understanding is reliable and ethically grounded, or emotional awareness completes the picture. People's behavior is often driven by underlying feelings. Recognizing emotions through micro-expressions, tone, and verbal cues provides insight into motivations and reactions. Integration means combining emotional cues with observed patterns and contextual factors to enhance your probabilistic understanding of behavior. This approach promotes empathy, ethical engagement, and improved communication. Ethical influence is the outcome of integration, and when observation, listening, pattern recognition, context awareness, and emotional insight are synthesized, you can communicate and interact strategically without resorting to manipulation or coercion. Ethical influence focuses on clarity, responsiveness, and mutual benefit. For example, understanding that a team member values structured communication allows you to present ideas more effectively, fostering cooperation rather than control. Reflection strengthens integration. After interactions, review what was observed, patterns of behavior, emotional signals, verbal content, and environmental influences. Consider how these factors intersected and what they revealed about tendencies, preferences, or priorities. Reflective practice allows you to refine your synthesis, correct misinterpretations, and improve future interactions. Over time, this iterative process makes reading people intuitive while maintaining ethical rigor. Predictive, not prescriptive, thinking is essential. Synthesizing observations allows you to anticipate likely responses without assuming certainty. Probabilistic predictions increase preparedness and communication effectiveness while respecting individual autonomy. For example, if someone consistently responds thoughtfully to detailed explanations, you can likely structure your future interactions in the same manner for clearer outcomes. Yet flexibility remains crucial, as no observation guarantees exact behavior. Integration across settings ensures versatility. The skills you develop in one environment, professional, social, or personal, can be adapted to others. Understanding how a person responds in a meeting, during a negotiation, or in casual conversation allows for comprehensive reading. Synthesizing observations across multiple settings improves your probabilistic insight while preserving ethical boundaries. The role of humility cannot be overstated. Reading people like an open book is a skill of probabilistic interpretation, not absolute knowledge. Ethical practice involves acknowledging limits, avoiding overconfidence, and recognizing that human behavior is influenced by countless variables. Humility ensures that observations enhance understanding rather than encourage misjudgment or manipulation. Practical application of integrated observation includes enhancing communication, improving collaboration, and strengthening relationships. And by combining observation, listening, context analysis, pattern recognition, and emotional awareness, you can tailor your approach to interactions with greater clarity. For instance, recognizing that a partner tends to respond positively to calm, structured dialogue allows you to present ideas more effectively, promoting collaboration and mutual understanding. Self-awareness supports ethical synthesis. Observing others while understanding your own tendencies, biases, and reactions enhances clarity and responsibility. Recognizing when personal emotions or assumptions influence interpretation ensures that observations remain grounded in objective, probabilistic reasoning rather than projection. Self-awareness strengthens ethical engagement and effective communication. Long-term mastery involves continuous observation, reflection, and adaptation. Human behavior is dynamic. People evolve, circumstances change, and interactions vary. Integrating insights requires ongoing attention, iterative learning, and refinement. Practicing synthesis over time develops the ability to read people responsibly, anticipate likely reactions, and engage with both strategic clarity and ethical integrity. The ultimate goal is not control, manipulation, or certainty. It is informed, ethical engagement. Reading people like an open book equips you to communicate effectively, build trust, and navigate complex interactions with composure and insight. Integration allows you to combine multiple dimensions, behavioral, verbal, contextual, and emotional, into a cohesive understanding that supports ethical influence and constructive outcomes. By mastering synthesis of observation, emotional awareness, pattern recognition, listening, and context, you create a framework that enhances situational awareness, promotes clarity, and strengthens relationships. Ethical practice ensures that this skill set benefits both you and others, encouraging fairness, tilt responsibility, and mutual respect. Ultimately, synthesizing these skills transforms your approach to human interaction. You develop probabilistic understanding, enhanced communication, and ethical influence, allowing you to navigate conversations, relationships, and complex social dynamics with confidence and integrity. Reading people like an open book is not about certainty, it is about clarity, awareness, and responsible engagement.